So, welcome everybody to, oh, the title of this class always drives me crazy. Writing Workshop for Video Games and Interactive Formats. It's very concise. But basically, Harris, it's an opportunity for them to practice working in teams and taking turns being lead writer as well as staff writer. So one of the things that they've been doing this week and last week a little bit is providing assignments. So they've each got a team that they're working on, and they're all developing their own story. But then, I'm lead writer on my story, but the rest of my teammates are staff writers for me. So, you need to write for, what are we doing this week? Achievements? Rewards? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So they're kind of getting that experience of working together and collaborating on something, because video games is definitely a lot more collaborative than other forms of entertainment writing. And you might be able to speak to that personally because you've also written film. So
Yeah. It really is. It's probably video games is the most collaborative medium I've worked in. There's just so many moving parts, and usually the games are so long. Especially if you're doing like an open world game, it's like 20 hours of material. Pretty hard for one person to do it all by themselves. Even though sometimes I try to,
I
it's
know.
impossible.
They're like, it's mine.
So,
Oh, wait, I need help. Yes.
it's not. Yeah, no, you need help. So yeah, you really have to learn how to work with other people and get everyone on the same page. And I really actually enjoy it after writing by myself for so long. It's kind of nice to be working with other people. Yeah, it's just a team effort. Really, it is. And you need to learn how to do that. Though actually, even for certain like television writing, it's done in a room like sitcoms, so that's done as a team. And even some dramas are done that way. So film, for the most part, is not. Even when the scripts are rewritten, usually it's a different writer. Sometimes they're teams of writers. I'm working on a screenplay right now with a writer, and so we're writing it together. And we had to work out a system for doing that. We kind of outlined it all together, and then I'm writing certain parts, and he's writing certain parts, and we'll rewrite each other's parts. But you have to find people that you're on the same wavelength with to do that, because otherwise, and that happens all the time. There's always going to be disagreements, but you want to make sure they're not so bad that you can't keep moving forward.
So that's one of the things that we talk about actually, is how do you handle those disagreements with your collaborative partners?
I think you just have to kind of set up a system from the start that if you both, the way I usually do it is we both have to agree on it if we're going to move forward. If either one doesn't agree, then we don't move forward. And so we have to come to a consensus. And it usually is easier to do than you would think. But it's important to be able to do that. Because it's not just the two writers who have to come to a consensus. Obviously, you have to convince the lead designer. You have to convince the producer. Sometimes you have to convince the publisher. Usually, always the publisher. So there's a lot of people that have to be on board with the same idea, and everyone has to reach a consensus, or it's not going to go through. And if a publisher doesn't agree with the way you want to go, eventually they'll just get rid of you and hire someone who wants to do it. But so part of the job is convincing them that your way is a good way to go. And so it's like I spend about half my time coming up writing long emails explaining why I'm suggesting going the way we're going, and convince them of it. That's as much a part of the job as actually writing the work.
Some of the assignments that I have them do involve writing one, and I let them go on to 2 pages if they have to, but I try to make them keep it to 1 page explanation of like, this is the world we're working in, and this is the plot summary. So there's 1 page for the world, and 1 page for the plot summary, and 1 page for kind of the explanation of how you come to terms with um, what kinds of objects and uh,
Items.
items, mounts, weapons, that kind of thing. What kinds of things uh, belong in your world and which ones don't? How you go about making those decisions. So, do you do all of that in email, or do you document it in something a little more formal, like a game documentation, narrative documents?
It's both. For the publisher, usually it's documentation. We'll write out the thing, they'll write it, they'll collaborate on it. But with the developer, it's usually back and forth emails. And I was thinking, the last game I worked on, Call of Wars Gunslinger, I would bet I did more email writing than I did actual script writing. I'm pretty sure if I added it all up, there'd be more words in the emails. So that's just a big part of it.
But I keep telling my students that gamers don't read. Do they read your emails?
Well, yeah, they do, but you can't go crazy. You have to be concise, and you definitely want to keep them within a reasonable length. Because you're right, if it's too long, they're not going to but I'm also the person who usually does the recording and the casting for that. So they actually listen to me a little bit more of that because in the end, I'm going to give them the final result, and so they know they. Yeah, but a lot of times I'll send them emails and they'll respond back, and I'll realize that they didn't really read all the email.
Right, they got to
every question.
yeah.
So that's probably because there's sometimes it's too long. But I had a producer on Gunslinger who would send me unbelievably long emails. He had been a programmer before he became a producer, and he's really logical thinker, and he has to work it all out. And he would send me really long things, and it was just like, finally, I got to think of it as being kind of cute that he would send me these long. But at first, it was like infuriating because it would take me an hour to go through his email.
Yes.
Yeah. So and then finally we decided I would just Skype and talk to him. It'd be much faster than trying to do this.
Yeah, we use Skype a lot. I encourage my students to get in touch with me over Skype and kind of say, it's kind of how I do a lot of work. I work remotely a lot, and having a Skype call can really change. If you're having difficulties communicating over email or whatever, then having a Skype call can really.
Yeah, especially if you're dealing with people whose first language is not English, which is a lot of times I deal with people who,
yes.
Don't speak English as well, even though they think they do sometimes. And so it's better to get on. And then because that way you don't have to go back. And also I'm on a different time zone, like 9 hours behind them. And so if we are doing emails back and forth, it can be a day in between responses. So
you're
a lot of that as well.
You're working with people in Poland, is that right?
With Techland, yeah. And then sometimes I've worked with people in Germany. But, and then in England sometimes as well, in the UK. So, but it's all the same, about the same distance.
It all seems the same, especially from the West Coast. Absolutely.
Yeah. Though I'm going to start next week. I'm working with Sony here in LA. For the first time, I worked with when I did Red Alert 3. I worked with EA LA. I'll now be working with Sony in LA, and that'll be really nice. I think to be in the office and be able to maybe it'll be good. But maybe I'll find it. I'll be too close, and they'll be able to ask me questions too soon. But it'll be all right.
I don't know yet. Come back in a week. No. You got to think on your feet. That's another thing I tell them a lot, is that you end up revising quickly and making changes fast. And do you find that's the case, or am I?
No, I do that all. I mean, I learned a lot of that. I worked in advertising for a long time, and also as a screenwriter. And there's lots of times you're doing pitches and you're in the room and you're looking at the faces of the executives as you're doing the pitch, and you're realizing that they are not that interested in it. And so as you're doing the pitch, you see things they kind of light up for, things they don't. So you kind of on the fly you change the pitch to match what they're kind of more interested in. That's, you're playing to the room. So, but a lot of times with game stuff as well, I have to. They'll come to me with a big problem, and I have to come up with an answer within an hour or less. So, yeah.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about last week. We'll fix it in story.
We'll fix it. What?
We'll fix it in story. Like instead of in film where everyone says we'll fix it in post, in games they say we'll fix it in story, and you're oh right, I have to rewrite this entire section because they just dropped an entire level or decided to add a character or something that.
Yeah, well, that's a very common thing I have to do. That happens every single game I work on. They have to cut entire levels because they didn't have time to finish it, and so you have to create the connecting tissue to make it make sense. So.
Do you find that happens more in games than it does in film? Because I know sometimes in film you have to say, you know what, we just can't do that scene in that location. We better fix it. But
yeah, it happens in film a lot too, actually. But screenplay is 120 pages, and the film's an hour and a half, and the game is so much bigger, so it happens much more often in the game. And but there's times when I was working in film that they would come to me and say, we can't afford all these actors, so we need to cut these number of characters, and we have to cut these locations out. We have to rewrite it to fit it now with these locations, or we have to change the location because that location wasn't working.
Yeah,
and, it's a pretty common thing. A lot of the times, though, with film, they'll just go to someone else. If you're already working on another project, they'll have someone else make those changes
on a film.
Yeah,
but on well, I guess it happens in video. You know what? I'm finding some headphones for me because I'm really getting echo. All right, I think that fixes the echo. Can you guys all still hear me?
Oh yeah, sound great.
Excellent. Okay.
Yep.
So
yes.
In film, I know they will often bring in another writer and say goodbye to you.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking. Actually, it happens every single time I've worked on a film.
That's what it seems like is pretty common in film. It seems a little less common in games. It's like a team gets to know a writer and they kind of hold on to you. At least that's been my experience.
I think it's so hard to get a new writer up to speed on the whole game that it's just actually kind of not very cost effective for them to bring another writer in. So I worked like when I just did Company Heroes 2, and that was a case where the writer they had left because of some kind of internal political issue they had going on, and so they brought me in, but I'd done RTS games, and I knew the designers.
Yeah, it happens in games, but I just get the impression it happens a little less than it happens in film.
Yeah, that's the only time actually it's ever happened where I've ever gone into it when another writer left and I joined in. That's the only time it's happened. And for the most part, that's why I like working in games even more than working in film. It's because, it's much more of it's much more of a team effort. I don't feel like they're just going to get rid of me. I think that I'm part of the team and they'll keep me through the end,
Yeah, they don't take your script and then walk away and do whatever they want with it, like they do in film.
Yeah, so and you have to like make changes to accommodate what's happening in the game, but that's fine. That's the job.
And I like it because they involve you and you know the reason why they're making these changes.
Yes, that's the thing. I don't even mind at all. I know why. If there's a certain mechanic that that's the game that you just can't make work, then we're gonna have to change everything throughout the game. I understand why. I was a big gamer before I started writing games, so I kind of understand that. This is from the point of view as a gamer, really.
Yeah. What are you working on right now that you can talk about?
Well, Dying Light. I'm working on it's for Techland. It's kind of what Dead Island should have been in the first place. with yeah, honestly, it's but we had a lot of. I mean, I'll be honest, because you know who you're going to tell. But we had problems with the publisher at the time, and they were very pushy about certain things, and we couldn't, and they wanted it rushed, and there were certain features we wanted to include, we couldn't include, and also just in terms of the types of characters in the game. Dead Island, the tone of that was much more campy, and then Dying Light, it's a little bit more gritty and real. Um, but it's tough because it's a four-player co-op like that island was, and you can't get too dramatic. I think if there's four-player co-op because everyone is talking among themselves. It's tricky how you do it. We wanted to make sure it works for single player as well, so we had to come up with a way to make it work if you were going to play by yourself or if you're playing with a group. And I think we did. We totally changed the way we did the cinematics, and it's pretty. I think it's all working much better. The story, we still have some problems to work out in the story, but hopefully we'll work them out.
When does it come out?
Next year sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. They don't know. We don't know exactly. And I think originally they wanted first quarter. I don't think that's possible. Honestly.
I was going to say
summer. From my point of view, it's not possible.
E3, maybe, definitely Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Hopefully by E2 something will be seen. We'll see though. I'll know next week. They're going to tell me when everything they think is going to be due. So, and I've been working with them on the story for about over a year. But I just went to Poland last week because the story has changed again, and now we had to finally. We had to finally. Part of the reason I went in there was to finally nail it down, get everyone to sign off on it because they kept wanting to change the story. When they signed with Warner Brothers as the publisher, they kind of wanted to add their 2 cents, and it just kept drifting around, and so we had to nail it down.
Harris, I've worked with Techland before, and so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, but they're it's because I'll say this: their CEO, who's a great guy, is very smart, but he tends to he wants to change the story constantly. He's just never exactly happy with it.
Yeah.
And he comes up with ideas when he's in the middle of the night. Yeah. He comes and tells you, and it's hard to and it's kind of demoralizing for the team if they've already worked on it. So that's why I went there. I went there actually to meet with him specifically to say to him, we have to nail it. We have to decide.
Stop now.
Yeah. So we did. I think we did. But honestly, I'm sure it'll change again a little bit. So.
Well, and some of it's cultural. Like. I'm sorry. I know I'm echoing somewhere. It's driving me crazy. Okay.
You think are you hearing an echo back?
I was, but I think it's my technology is being too smart for me. I think I've got it figured out. No, I have you muted. So you're just coming through mine. Techland. Yes. I think there's some cultural things going on there too, where when you work internationally, which you do a lot of times as a game writer, you end up working with people from lots of different cultures, and you have to be aware and understanding of what that means.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I worked on the Call of Juarez games with them, and they're westerns. So because of that, because they're westerns, I think they gave me a lot more. They give me a lot more latitude in those. They just assume they know as much about it as I do. But with the Dead Island games, not so much. Now they're more hands on with the story in that. So that's why actually Gunslinger was probably the best experience I've had working on a game recently. That turned out really well in terms of the story, at least.
Yeah.
And the game is big too. But Dying Light won't end up being exactly as the way I would have done it by the end. But it's me trying to help them with their story and make it work as best as I can.
So have you ever had an idea for a game like, I want this idea, I want to make this game, and then pitched it to somebody and made a game?
No, I haven't. I've done that with movies a lot, but not with games. It
Yeah.
just seems they're not really. Though I did have an idea for a game that I thought was a great idea, and I've been holding it, thinking, well, I'm gonna when we're done with Dying Light, I'll pitch it to Tech because I thought maybe they would do it because I want them so much. But I just saw the new Grand Theft Auto 5 is coming out, and the idea I had is in the game really, which was so. And actually, there's a game called what's it called? It's a well, basically my idea was I'll tell you because it's already been done now, which was I wanted to do like kind of complicated thefts where you assemble a team like capers really like I love caper movies, so like you put together a team and work out these really complicated capers, and and you could do it as a co-op, but the capers would be very complex, and you'd have to figure out how to break the system, and that'd be the puzzle really. But that seems to be the case in Grand Theft Auto 5. They got that as a feature, and then there's a new game I can't remember the name right now that just came out that also is about putting together a crew and pulling out these robberies. So
Isn't it funny how there are these ideas that just sort of everybody has at the same time?
yeah,
It's like, oh, it's time for this idea to come out, and it lands in like five different people's heads.
well,
And
about 15 years ago, I wrote a comedy that I sold actually. That didn't get made though, which was a comedy about the end of the world. And now this year, two movies came out about both of them really good actually about comedies about the end of the world. Yeah. So I kept thinking someday someone's going to do that, and they did. So yeah.
so, how do you like? Do you have any advice for our students here who are like, oh, I don't want to tell anybody my idea because somebody might steal it, or like, what do you have
Well,
advice for
yeah,
that?
I would for the most part I would I think I don't know. I always believe ideas are can be kind of cheap. It's the execution that's the most important part, really. I mean, there could be a lot of different ways of doing the same idea, but if there's something that's like very high concept and you think is kind of special, you don't want to tell a lot of people about that. But that's especially true though in the movie world where things can get lifted sometimes, but not very often. Honestly, I haven't seen that happen
Well, and like you
because
said, there are two movies out this year about the end of the comedies about the end of the world. So it's not like if there's only one chance for it ever to happen.
and I did a movie for Disney which was a body switch thing, and right the year I did that, there must have been four body switch movies that came out. So it's really how you do it rather than the high concept. So, and I do think younger writers tend to like hold on to their ideas and get really paranoid about the whole thing. But it's really about learning how to execute more than it is about the actual idea. Because the same idea can be done a lot of different ways.
Yep.
Some ways really badly, some ways really well. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So do you have are your guys? You said some of them are interested in screenwriting and some are in game writing.
Yes. We've got a variety of different. We try to expose them to lots of different kinds of entertainment writing. And
Hmm.
so they've got two classes on game writing, and I don't know how many screenwriting classes. Maybe maybe a student knows. How many screenwriting classes have you done?
A lot bunch.
Too many.
Well, I can talk a little bit about how I broke into both. If that's helpful or interesting. It was a, as you breaking into game writing, it was hard to break into both of them, honestly.
So
So if
start
you're
with
just should I talk
film.
about that a little bit?
Yeah, start with film.
Okay. So I went to when I got out, I went to college in Wisconsin to have a degree in English and economics, but I knew I was interested in writing, and I ended up deciding I wanted to go. I worked in advertising for years, but I knew I wanted to write screenplays, or stage plays too, actually. But as I was researching, I saw there was no really good way to make a living writing stage plays. So even though I wrote both, I decided I'd go to graduate school in writing. And at the time, there weren't that many places. Iowa Writers Workshop was one, and I applied to a couple different ones. But USC had just started a new writing graduate program, so I applied to that and got in. And I liked that idea of that one because they had you had to write a novel, a screenplay, and a stage play to get your master's. And I thought it'd be good. I'd like learn all these different, So that's what I did, and I made a lot of good contacts there. And I thought, and I got an idea of how the entertainment business worked. But from the time I graduated to the time I sold my first screenplay, it was 5 years, and I was writing the whole time. And I wrote 8 screenplays before I finally got my first assignment. So you have to really just know you're going to have to put in a lot of time to break in. And really, it was interesting to me. I went to school with a lot of people all wanting to do the same thing, and it was the people who were the most persistent, finally, who broke through. Not even the most talented, obviously, but the most persistent. That's more important than talent. Talent's important, but you got to be able to the hour. It's that 10,000 hour rule, or whatever. You got to put the time in, do a lot of writing, and in that period of time, those 5 years, I wrote 3 novels and those 8 screenplays, and I just kept trying. I just wrote every day, even when I was working in advertising. I kept every morning, write for like 3 hours every morning, and I finally got an assignment to write a screenplay. Met through someone I had gone to graduate school with. They had kind of gave my name to a producer, and that's how I got in the door there. And that's still after that I wasn't really in. I had to keep writing. It was like 2 years after that where I finally sold an original script. And over the course of 10 years, I sold 5 original screenplays and did a bunch of assignments. And but it was like every you have to. I really felt like I had to keep reinventing myself. And at least in Hollywood, it was really important to kind of generate some kind of heat. It's like once you've sold a script of money, people know who you are. But then the heat kind of dies out. You have to reinvent yourself again. And it was very frustrating. I sold a lot of scripts and wrote a lot of assignments, and had very few things made, which is very common in Hollywood. And at the same time, that's when I decided I was going to start to investigate games. It was 2005, and is this too boring? Should I keep going?
No, keep going.
Okay, all right.
Tell us how you got into games.
So I got really good at this one game called Soldier of Fortune 3, I don't know, or 2 maybe it was Soldier of Fortune 2, and I ended up and I got recruited by all these clans, and I was competing online, and I ended up meeting the people who created the game, and they found out I was a screenwriter. The guy who wrote the script for the game, and he asked me if I could help him with some Hollywood contacts. So I said I would if he would help me with some game contacts, because I was interested in trying to figure out how that worked. Because I was obviously I was a big gamer, and I saw that the stories in games sometimes weren't that great. Sometimes they were great though, like Riddler 2, which I love actually. So so I ended up going. I took all these guys at all these different studios out to lunch, Blizzard and Atari, Activision. I just bought them lunch and I just picked their brains about what they did and how people work as writers in the business. And I started going to the Game Developers Conference where I met you, and I still had and I just started talking to people, meeting people, and trying to figure out how it worked. And finally, a guy who was at Blizzard had gone to Atari and hired me to write a game for them. It was based on Dungeons and Dragons. Dragon Shard is what the game was. So and that's how I kind of broke in. But even after I did that, it was like another year before I got hired again. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, sorry.
So it was really about going to the conferences and making contacts, handing out cards. I think people at EA found one of my cards, and that's how they contacted me about working on the Command and Conquer. And I had to go in, and I had to really sell myself, though. I was like 5 meetings with them to convince them to hire me to work on it. I just went, and I was interviewing at Blizzard last year, and that was like, it was like such a gauntlet to get. And I must have went to 3 all day long interviews with all these different teams. They still didn't hire me.
I know they do that. Did they at least buy you lunch?
Did you do that? Did you go out?
I haven't interviewed with them, but I've interviewed with others, and I'm like,
Oh yeah.
at least buy me lunch if you're gonna take
Yeah,
up
they
that
do,
much
of course.
time.
So that's how, yeah. So that's how I got into games, really. But in both cases, it took a couple of years. You have to be patient. You have to kind of work. And for games, I think what helped was that I had credits in film and TV, and that impressed the people like at Atari.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it should have, just because I had credits and it really gave them no indication I knew how to write a game. And honestly, I really didn't. I kind of like learned on the job with them on that project. But from that point on, I started, learning better how to do it, and going to the conferences actually, and just meeting people and going to those workshops helped a lot.
There are a
And
lot of resources for learning how to do it, like outside of school. Definitely.
so that's kind of how I broke in. So I don't know if anybody has any questions for me.
Yep, now it's question time. Somebody had a question about Command and Conquer.
Oh, they did. Okay.
I thought.
That would be Philip because um just what is it like working in the universe that developed? You know what I mean? Like
Say that. I'm having a
somebody.
little trouble hearing you. I don't know why. Say it one more time.
I said, what's it like working in a universe that developed that so many people have worked on before?
Oh, that's a pretty common thing in games actually to do as well. I think I got the job with them because I convinced them I understood that universe really well, and I did. I played all their games before I
Hmm.
go in to meet with them. Like when I met with Blizzard, I had already played most of Blizzard's games anyway, but I played them again before I went in actually, because I think it's really important to let them know that you understand that universe and those characters, and you're never probably going to know it as well as actually the people who know it the best are like the hardcore fans who rate the wikis. They know it better than anybody, even the people who write the games. But you want to
We
convince
love
them.
those wikis.
But I convinced them I really understood the tone and I understood the universe, and I knew all the actors who had put in the. I mean, I just was very familiar with it. So, and I liked it. I wanted to be
Hmm.
part of that. We did have to change it up with Red Alert 3 a little bit because we were progressing the story. And the people who were
Hmm.
working on Red Alert 3 a lot of them were the same people who worked on Red Alert 2. And the
Huh.
guy I kind of co-wrote the story with had worked as the lead sound guy on Red Alert 2, so he really understood it very well. So I had them to
Huh.
kind of fall back on as well. But so yeah, do you like that universe, the Red Alert, or do you prefer
I
the Command and Conquer universe, the Iberian?
um that's a tough question. I like I like both of them, but I like the characters in the original a little better. Uh, well, because of Kane.
Yeah,
Wow. You
yeah. So
it said
yeah,
you wrote
Kane's a
for the
great character.
expansion pack for
I was
three.
really excited to work on. I worked on Kane's Wrath, which was like an expansion for Command and Conquer 3. And
Yeah.
the best part about it was I got to like hang out with the guy who played Kane. It was like because I went to the shooting, when they shot the. Actually, I even got to see him in his boxing shorts. Kind of took some of the mystique away.
Yeah, when you see the villain in his boxer shorts, it's all over.
Yeah, hard to make Kane, but it was really fun to work with. That was one of my favorite franchises. So I was really
You guys
glad.
talk.
Yes.
I'm gonna fix it.
That's all right. Anybody else have any other questions?
I had a quick question, Mr. Orkin.
Everyone sounds very
Hello?
quiet.
Can you hear me?
I'm not hearing you very well. I don't know if you guys can hear me. Let me see the.
Can you hear me now?
Let me see if I can get the chat working. Oh, I see you in the GoToMeeting down there too as well. So. I'm gonna turn off the Skype. I might actually help the sound.
Okay.
Go ahead and ask me some more. See if I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm having trouble hearing everybody.
Are you having trouble hearing still?
Yeah, I can hear. Yeah, I'm hearing you. Okay. Actually, I turned off Skype because I'm seeing you on video on my GoToMeeting thing.
How are you seeing that?
If it'd be easier, I could type my question in the message box.
Yeah, go ahead and type your question, and I'll say it out loud again
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Sure.
so we can get it.
They're typing you the question.
Yeah.
I'm working on it. I'm not the fastest typer.
I was gonna say, hasn't played those typing games where you have to hit the right button before world
In high
explodes.
school, I did those, and I hated them so much.
There's a zombie
All right,
one,
I
you
got
know.
it. Oh, really? That'd be cool, actually. All right, I sent it.
Okay, so Adam's question is, I'm curious as to your transition from screenwriting to video game writing. For example, did you have to learn any coding? Did you have to learn how to program?
No, no. If I had to learn how to program, I would not be able to do it. I came in just as someone who was kind of an expert on story, and mainly someone good at writing dialogue, and so so that's kind of yeah. I did have to understand how games were put together and how the structure of how a story could be told in a game, but I didn't really have to know any of the technical areas. Though I learned how to build levels in games. I used, different Unreal Tournament to, I used just to learn how to do that. I wanted to have a better sense of it. So, I could never really do that as a job. I'm just not fast enough at it. But I wanted to kind of understand it. So, what do you think, Wendy? I don't think you really have to know the coding aspect. I mean, no one's ever going to ask you to know how to do that. So I think if you do know it and you go to a game company and you can help them out with that, I think that makes you more employable.
If you're a programmer, you've always got a job. If you're a writer, you don't always have a job. But just like you said, my opinion is the same, is that you don't have to know how to be a coder. You don't have to be a programmer. But you do have to understand how games work, like how they're put together and what's possible and what's not. And like how big it is a thing that you're asking them to do for a story. How expensive it really is to say, no, I want to have a character that follows you around the entire game. Like, that's not in a story. You can just say, oh, yeah, you got this constant companion of a parrot. Well, in a game, actually, that's a lot of work. You can't just. Anyway, so the more you know about how it all goes together technically, the better equipped you are to talk to the people who put it together. But I've taken programming classes and discovered that I'm a C student in programming, and like I can do it, but I'm slow. And so I will hire other people to do it who are fast and much better at it. But I know how it works, and I know how hard it is, like what it is I'm asking them to do. So I haven't kept up with my programming. I can't be employed as a programmer at this stage of the game because I'm just not up on the latest stuff. But Yeah, late at night when the game is about to go out the door, I can stand behind somebody and find the missing semicolon. Ah, we've lost him.
Mhm.
We've lost Harris, our special guest. We'll try to get him back.
Aw.
C++ student. That's very funny, Antonio. I did mean average grade student. We're gonna have to stop that and try again.
Are you trying to call me on Skype?
Yeah. Are you back?
Yeah. You got me?
I've got your sound. I don't have your face, but I do have the handsome face of the guy who's wanted dead or alive.
The character from Gunslinger, yeah.
So I think you have to hit your video button.
Okay.
And while we're working on that, Antonio asks, how can we make contacts with someone in the film industry? So you talked about making contacts with people in the game industry. How do you do it in film?
No, that's really difficult. On film, you need to, I would say, if you have a spec script, you can try submitting directly to producers. You can kind of find them on LinkedIn or on IMDb, but it's pretty difficult. You're kind of caught in a slush pile. That's why it's important in a way to be in Los Angeles to start like meeting people. Um, but that could take a long time to break through. Because you know what? There's so many people wanting to submit to producers. Obviously the best way is to find an agent, but that can take a very long time to find an agent as well because you need to give them a script that they think they can sell, immediately. It can be tough. I mean, there's people who enter game or screenwriting competitions, and those contests, and you kind of get a high. You can meet people that way, but otherwise, I think kind of have to be in Los Angeles.
Mm.
Um,
So move to Los Angeles and start.
I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
that's what they would tell people starting.
Um, and it seems to me like, oh, sorry, I've got to figure out this echo. It seems to me like getting a comic book made of your story will be a good way to get your movie made. But that's just an outsider looking in, like, oh, look, another comic book movie.
You know what? I think that actually is not a bad way to go because what it does is it creates a it shows that it actually worked in one medium, and someone can look at the whole story and see that it worked visually, especially if it sells decently as a graphic novel. The screenplay I'm working on now with that other writer, he's also a director, and he also is someone who writes graphic novels. And so we were gonna. That was our plan actually. If once we finish the screenplay, if we can't get any bites initially, we try to do it as a graphic novel, and it might be a better way to go actually in terms of selling it. That's not a bad plan.
It's interesting. I'm right. Ha ha ha. I'm not even in it. But that's one of the cool things about this program that these guys are taking right now is that they've had classes on how to do a comic book. They've had classes on how to do, film and specific
Yeah.
genre stuff. And so I tell them that the days are gone where you get to be a writer of one thing for the rest of your life. You just have to write lots of different things. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, that's how I've made a living as a writer. Because if I didn't do that, I don't think I would have made a living.
Yeah.
So I did advertising, worked in that, screenwriting, radio plays, games. I'm glad to work in all those different mediums, and I kind of like it actually. So and it's all storytelling, but you do have to adapt to the different.
All right. Anybody else got questions? Aha, Morgan has one. With experience in both film and games, do you feel one medium is better to write for as a storyteller? Does writing for a game diminish the story because a certain studio doesn't focus as much on story?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's harder to tell stories in games because that's not the primary purpose of a game necessarily is to tell a story. It's to offer play. But I think part of it is because it's a new medium and we're just still learning how to do it. I felt like with Gunslinger, I was actually able to tell us the story I wanted to tell and also have a great game at the same time. But it's tough. A movie is a much better, probably medium for just purely telling a story because that's all it's about, just the story. Same with the book, and the book is even better in a way because you get to create the visuals and everything. It's all you, but it depends what you like. It depends what you enjoy. I love the whole medium of games. I like the challenge of trying to fit the story to with the game and make it all work together. I can love that stuff.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Hmm. How how do you what's the best way to deal with a tight deadline? Panic or not panic?
I think it's good to panic initially.
Yeah?
You have to like buckle down and just do it. But it's okay
Okay.
to acknowledge the panic. I can't avoid it. But I tend to be a fast writer. But the thing is, you have to tell people that you can only do it as fast as you can do it. I always give them the option of saying, you can, it's that whole thing. You can pay me more and I'll do it quicker. Um,
Wow.
but it won't be as good as if I have more time. If you want it to be
Hmm.
really great, you have to give me a little more time. So it's kind of up to them, the people who are paying you at that point. But if you're doing it for school, then you're basically paying for it. So
I tell
it's a different
people
thing.
that when I work with them professionally that I panic early and often,
Yeah.
but then I'm done. Like I panic early and often, get it all figured out, and then I'm done. We're no more panicking till it's out the door.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think that's good. That's why you have to panic and let yourself do it and acknowledge that you're panicking.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're just holding it in for the whole length of time you're working on the project.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's, and I do admit with games, I've had some really really tight deadlines, more than anything else I've worked on, because
Hmm.
they have these really strict, milestones they have to get things done by, and so they tell you that they have to have it done by this day, and there's no way around it. So.
Hmm.
But sometimes you can find great creativity in like working under that kind of pressure as well. So.
That's true.
Oh, yes.
All right. Any more questions? Unless somebody's typing something, I'm not seeing.
That's when I can see the little questions when they pop up. But you're not seeing my head anymore, right?
No, I don't see your head anymore.
That's all right. You're probably getting better. Or,
This is your idealized version of yourself.
I'm hearing myself echoing, which is why I'm repeating everything twice.
Say hi to Kane for me.
Oh, say hi to Kane. Yeah. Sorry, I gotta turn off
Yeah.
my butler. My phone tells me it's 9 o'clock every night. Um, so students, since the name of our class is writing workshop, and we've been talking so much about working together in teams and getting feedback and giving feedback. And you guys have been working on interactive fiction stories. Um, I asked Terrace before he agreed to come on here and talk to you guys. I asked him if he would be willing to play through one of your Twine games or any of your Twine games that you guys would like his feedback on. And so I know you're still doing the second draft and it's not due until Sunday, and like, not rushing you. I'm just saying, if you're
But
interested
it's
in getting Harris's feedback, he said he would take a look.
but it's
So,
due Friday.
sorry, due Friday? Well,
That's what
yes, it's due Friday.
you can change it if you want. I don't mind. I really don't mind.
No, the fact is that other people have to give feedback.
All
I
right.
forgot. I forgot that I'm making you all give feedback and feedback and feedback and feedback.
It's okay.
Um,
That's a good lesson to learn, honestly. It's like I'm working with this new writer, actually at Techland, and it's really hard for him to take feedback. And that's kind of what I've been teaching him, that not to take it personally, because it's not about him at all. It's just about trying to make the story work. And and he can give me critique on my stuff too. I mean, my stuff's not perfect. So,
And
and we'll eventually it'll just keep getting better, hopefully.
yeah, yeah, it's so valuable to have the second opinion of somebody else.
Antonio, I have to ask you a question while you're here. Did I give you too much feedback? Is it gonna be hard for you to finish by tomorrow night? Because I told you to change so much. No? Okay. I
Yay!
was worried about that. I don't want to damage your grade.
No, see,
Here's
that's
also the trick about taking feedback is like you want to get feedback from everyone, but you don't have to take all of it necessarily either. What you do is actually how I usually do it is if I have enough people say the same thing, then I know I need to change it. If only one person,
Ah,
likely maybe it doesn't need to change. But yeah, if I have like more than two people saying that something's not working, I have to really consider the fact that it's probably not working.
okay.
and it's also good to get to the heart of what it is that's not working. Like, they may
Yes.
complain about, you know, I don't like this girl. I don't like this girl. I don't like this girl. And it's like, okay, we need to step back and say, what is it that you don't like about the girl? And then you find out it's not the girl they don't like at all. Like, they like the character. It's you know, the plot twist that you have getting her into the story or something like that. So you kind of have to talk to people, especially if the feedback that they're giving you doesn't really make sense to you or doesn't ring true. If you talk it through with them and have a feedback kind of dialogue, then you can often get better results out of your story entirely. Like, I've often gotten feedback that didn't make any sense to me at all, and I was really tempted to just toss it out. But I was like, let's actually ask them what more about this. Like, what did you mean by this? And if I get them talking about it more, I can realize that, oh, I completely forgot to explain this particular thing. I thought I did, but you're right. In this version that you read, I accidentally deleted that part and got to go put it back in because it's crucial to the story apparently. So yeah, the more feedback is always better.
When I was working with the studios, I'd get studio notes from producers and studio executives, and a lot of the time they'd all have a problem with one area in particular, but and it was the same kind of thing. I didn't know what the problem. I had to kind of figure out what the problem was, and and it usually wasn't exactly what they were pointing to. It usually had to do something else. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I could never talk to those people and ask them again. They wouldn't have time for me.
Yes.
They would send me their notes and that was it.
Yes.
And I had to kind of like figure it out on my own. But that's really helpful because a lot of times people aren't really good at giving feedback like that. They just know what they don't like and they're just telling you that. And you have to kind of figure out why they don't like what they don't like.
Yes. But sometimes the note they give you is, I don't like the girl. And you leave the girl in and change something else about the story, and it comes back with, fantastic, you fixed it, and it's like, yeah, I did, by not taking your advice, but by finding out what it was underneath that was really the problem. So yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's a really valuable thing to learn how to do.
Okay, Antonio. So Antonio and anybody else, if and when you are ready to have Harris, Harris, would you rather have me forward to you their stories, or are you comfortable with giving them your email address and letting them send it to you directly?
They can send it directly. That's fine.
All right.
Yeah. As long as they don't sell my email address to other marketers.
No spamming.
Hey, out of work writers have to make money.
Yeah, I heard about a guy. I just heard the other day about a guy who got one of those telephone numbers that every time you call it, they charge you money to call it. And he put it at home, so every time marketers would call him at home, it would cost them money to call him. And he was like making a lot of money per month. He would let them call and let all the calls because he was getting paid for it. It's not a great idea.
Yes. Okay, Harris, what's your email address that you want them to have?
Just HARISORKIN at charter.net.
Before you go, Katrina had a question above.
Yeah, she's asking, would you advise self-publishing games or stories in order to build a portfolio and maybe make yourself more attractive to a studio, perhaps make yourself more hireable because you've already self-published games?
I don't know if it's as impressive if it's self-published. I think it's as long as you have a portfolio with work that shows you kind of understand how to write things. I mean, I think that's if it's a self-published game that gets some attention, that's probably really, really good. I don't know. It's. What do you think, Wendy, in terms of the self-publishing thing? I mean, it's actually in terms of novels, it's become very big, and I know a lot of writers who are screenwriters who are now self-publishing novels, like through Amazon, and doing okay with it. So.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the novels, but I am a big fan of publishing your own games because it's just so easy to do something for an iPhone or do something for Android and have interactive games. It's interactive stories, interactive fiction. Like, there's so many things like RPG Maker or Game Maker or Game Salad. Like, there are a lot of tools out there to help you make a game and to publish it places where people can, you can publish it as a free game, publish it as a 99-cent game. Like, it may not make you $1 million, probably won't, but you'll definitely get honest feedback from people who buy it or who play it, and it'll help you learn.
Yeah, and I think it will if it works. I think it will impress a game developer that you're that committed to doing something like that.
Yeah. All right, Antonio wants to know what to put in the subject line so that it's not spam.
We can just mention your class,
Yeah.
Wendy's class.
Wendy's class assignment.
Yeah, that's fine. And I'll check my spam folder, make sure it doesn't.
My name would never show up in your spam.
Yeah.
He's actually got my emails all just auto directly into his spam folder. I know.
The name Wendy.
Yeah. Actually, Harris, I thought I should mention to you that one of their books that they have to help them learn how to do this is Professional Techniques for Video Game Writing.
Oh.
Do you remember? I honestly, I edited it, but I don't remember which chapter you wrote.
think I did. I do the first person shooter one on that one, or I did one of them. I did like voiceover recording. One I did first. Oh, genres. I did first person shooter.
Yeah, I think it must have been the
I think that
voiceover
one
recording.
Yeah. So it's about writers in the recording studio.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah. So go ahead and look that up in your book. All right, everybody.
All right.
Thanks for coming, everybody. And I'm going to try to archive this. I've had varying success with archiving it, but I really appreciate you making the time to come and talk to students, Harris. They're very interested and eager and graduating soon, and so looking at the future, and appreciate having more than one person's thoughts and advice about what the world holds for entertainment writers. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Glad to do it. I was glad. I was very happy when I was starting out and people would talk to me about it. So I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very
All
much,
right. Nice
everybody.
talking, guys.
I'm
Thanks for
going to
being
stop
here.
the recording.